Spoiler alert. Mufasa dies. I think everybody knows that by now. That's the point of The Lion King. But did you know that The Lion King is based on a true, even crazier story? Well, okay, it wasn't about a pride of lions, but it was about a king who was famously known as Sundiata the Lion King. Unlike Mufasa, who died in a stampede, Sundiata met his end after building a global superpower. This is the story behind the Disney fable. From the African savannah to the tables of Tinseltown, the real Lion King was a true story even greater than the Disney classic. He was a boy who couldn't walk, the son of a king, but a useless prince, ridiculed by the entire court, his mother weeping in shame. One day, the humiliation became too much. He demanded his father's blacksmiths forge a massive iron rod. He gripped the bar, he strained, and with a scream that shook the palace, he pulled himself to his feet. The iron rod, a bar of solid metal, bent into a bow from the force. In that instant, the useless prince died, and the Lion King was born. This is the story of how a crippled boy, driven by shame, became the founder of one of the richest empires in human history. To understand how a boy could bend solid iron, you have to understand the prophecy that ruined his life. This wasn't just any boy in any kingdom. Our story begins in the 13th century West Africa, a time of chaos. The great Ghana Empire was collapsing, creating a power vacuum that brutal warlords were fighting to fill. It was here that a soothsayer told Sundiata's father, King Magan Konfata of the small Mandinka people, that his greatest heir would be born from an ugly woman. So, when hunters presented the king with Sogolon, a hunchbacked and monstrous woman, he remembered the prophecy and married her. But the prophecy seemed to be a lie. Their son, Sundiata, was born a cripple. For years, he couldn't walk. He crawled on all fours, weak and powerless. He was an object of scorn. The king's first wife, the cruel stepmother Sasuma Berede, openly mocked both mother and son. Then, around 1224, the old king died. Sasuma seized power, placing her own son, Dankaran Tuman, on the throne. Sundiata, the prophesied king, was now a ridiculed outcast in his own home. He was a prince with no power, no allies, and no future. And this constant daily humiliation was building toward a breaking point. And that breaking point arrived on the day he shocked the entire kingdom. This was the moment of the iron rod. When Sundiata stood, bending solid iron, everyone saw his true strength. But his stepmother, Sasuma, didn't just see strength. She no longer saw a useless cripple. She saw the prophecy. She saw a threat to her own son's throne. Sundiata's new power had terrified her, and she plotted his death. To save her son, Sundiata's mother, Sogolon, made the only choice she could. She chose exile. This was Sundiata's time in the wilderness. For years, they wandered from one kingdom to another, seeking asylum. This is where the boy died, and the warrior was forged. They finally found refuge in the distant kingdom of Mima. There, Sundiata thrived. He became a great hunter, an unmatched warrior, and a brilliant military strategist. The king of Mima was so impressed that he made Sundiata his second in command. The useless prince was now a beloved general, leading armies. But back in his homeland, the kingdom he'd been forced to abandon, a new evil was rising to fill the vacuum. That vacuum was filled by a man of pure terror, Sumaoro Kante, the sorcerer king of the Soso. While Sundiata was in exile, Sumaoro had forged his own empire, built not on unity, but on fear. The legends say his power was supernatural. His secret chamber was a place of horrors, filled with grim relics. And he guarded a magical balafon, a xylophone that was the source of his dark power. This sorcerer king, in his brutal reign of terror, swept across the land and conquered Sundiata's home of Niani. And what did the false king, Dankaran Tuman, do? He proved his cowardice, abandoned his people, and fled. The Mandinka people were now oppressed, leaderless, and desperate. They needed a liberator. They needed the prophecy to be real. Messengers were sent on a desperate quest, searching all the kingdoms of West Africa, looking for the Lion King. The messengers found Sundiata in Mima. They gave him the news. His home was conquered, his people were enslaved, and the sorcerer king was responsible. Sundiata, now a respected general, had a choice: stay safe in Mima or return to liberate his homeland. The choice was never in doubt. He returned, but he didn't come alone. He used his strategic mind and his new reputation to forge a great coalition, uniting the scattered Mandinka clans into a single, massive army. But in their first battles, the coalition faltered. Sumaoro seemed invincible. Arrows and spears just glanced off him. The sorcerer king could not be harmed. Sundiata needed an inside man. He got something better: a spy. His half-sister, who had been captured by Sumaoro, managed to escape the sorcerer's palace and find Sundiata's camp. She had learned his secret, his one weakness. Sumaoro's magic was tied to a totem, the spur of a rooster. Armed with this knowledge, Sundiata prepared for the final battle. This was the Battle of Karina, around 1235. The air was thick with the dust of two massive armies. The sound was a deafening roar of drums, horns, and war cries. At the center of the chaos, Sumaoro Kante seemed untouchable, laughing as his men cut through the first wave of the coalition. But on the other side, a general, tall on his horse, watched the field with a cold calm. The Lion King, who once crawled on all fours, now sat taller than any warrior on the field. He waited for his moment. He saw Sumaoro. Steady in the chaos, Sundiata nocked his special arrow, the one tipped not with iron, but with a rooster's spur. He drew the bow, aimed, and let it fly. It wasn't a kill shot. The arrow only grazed the Sorcerer King's shoulder, but the effect was instant. Sumaoro let out a scream, not of pain, but of terror. His magic was gone. The invincible king was suddenly mortal. Terrified, he fled the field and vanished into the mountains, never to be seen again. His army, seeing their god king run, collapsed in on itself. The Lion King had defeated the Sorcerer King. The tyrant was gone. The prophecy was fulfilled. But now, Sundiata had to do more than just liberate his people. He had to build them an empire. Sundiata Keita was crowned Mansa, or King of Kings. But his first moves weren't about glory, they were about strategy. He knew an empire wasn't built on a single victory, it was built on an economic engine. So, his first act as king was to secure the money. He seized immediate control of the Bambouk and Bure goldfields, the richest in West Africa. This gave him a near monopoly on the most valuable commodity on Earth. Next, he took over the trans-Saharan salt trade routes. This was the true genius. His new Mali empire now sat as the ultimate middleman between the two most valuable resources on the continent. He taxed the gold from the south as it flowed north to Arab merchants, and he taxed the salt from the northern mines as it flowed south to West Africa, where it was a priceless resource needed for survival. He controlled the entire supply chain. Finally, to hold this new massive federation of clans together, he proclaimed the Kurukan Fuga. This was an oral constitution, a set of laws that united the clans under one government. He had replaced Sumaoro's tyranny with law. He had replaced chaos with an economic machine. Sundiata had created the stable, wealthy, and unified foundation. And that foundation would allow his family to build a legacy that would shock the entire world. Sundiata ruled for 20 years, turning his military coalition into a stable, imperial superpower. He had done the impossible. After all, who would dare to test the Lion King? This was the man who had the audacity to hunt a sorcerer, fail, and then come back to hunt him again, until he won. The useless prince who couldn't walk, the ridiculed boy who crawled on all fours, had become the founder of an empire. And it's an empire that almost never was. Think about it. If the king had ignored the prophecy of the ugly woman, Sundiata never would have been born. If his mother hadn't thought quickly and chosen exile, he would have been assassinated as a child. If his stepmother's plot had succeeded, the story would have ended in tragedy. No empire, no economic engine. But they failed, and that economic machine was built. That foundation of gold and salt, secured by his victory at Carina, a few generations later, it would be inherited by his grandnephew, a man named Mansa Musa. And that wealth would make Mansa Musa the richest human being to ever live. Sundiata's story is a true epic. It's the real-life story of the Lion King, a crippled boy who was humiliated, exiled, and hunted, who returned, defeated a tyrant, and forged an iron rod into an empire. Sundiata built the economic engine, but his grandnephew, Mansa Musa, was the one who would spend its wealth in a way that broke the global economy. That is our next video. Subscribe so you don't miss the story of how the real richest man in history came to power.